Welcome back, everyone, to this week's BEAD Challenge Lunch and Learn. Happy to have back Devon Braunstein and Shubhika Agarwal. Thank you again for doing this outreach. Very important to keep this going for communities. We really appreciate your time and expertise. Illinois Extension is happy to partner with the Illinois Office of Broadband and the Illinois Broadband Lab in this outreach. And without further ado, I'll have Devon Braunstein kick us off today. Thank you, Devon.
Great. Hi, everyone. All right, I will go ahead and share my screen. Good to see you all. And we'll get started. So exciting session today because the challenge phase officially opened yesterday. So today we're going to do a live demo of creating a challenge in 3 different ways, moving from the map to the portal and then initiating a challenge in the portals. So I know a handful of you have already gotten the chance to activate your portal accounts, which is great. But today we will walk through what that actually looks like and then can answer any questions. We'll also share about opportunities for support to make sure that you're getting your questions answered. So we'll go through our recap items first, then do this demo, and then go through next steps and Q&A. The goals for today, we hope that you will leave this session knowing what the BEAD challenge process is, why it's important, and how to participate. You'll know the key challenge process dates, be familiar with current and upcoming resources, and last but not least, most important, understand how to use the BEAD challenge portal and submit challenges. So a couple of recap items in case we have anyone new here today. The goal of BEAD is to ensure universal broadband coverage in the state using fiber wherever possible. Illinois was allocated $1.04 billion to connect all unserved and underserved locations to broadband over the next 5 years. The BEAD process is kind of bucketed out into these 5 categories. The first was completing a 5-year plan, then an initial proposal volume 1, which describes the challenge process that we will undergo. So that was approved earlier in February and is sort of defining the process that we're going through now. What's next is initial proposal volume 2, which is a bigger document and describes in more detail the actual grant process, how the state will select sub-grantees to cover the areas that have been prioritized through the challenge process. We'll go through our 120-day challenge process, ending with getting that map right and solidified. And then we'll kick off our sub-grantee selection process roughly this summer, but of course depends on all of these other items and NTIA approval. So we now have this formal challenge process timeline that we're operating off of, and publishing this timeline kind of kicked off the 120 days, and that happened on February 20th. So we are in the 3rd chevron here, the challenge phase as of yesterday, which means that the portal is open and we are officially accepting challenges for 21 days. So you can see the little "We Are Here" star. After the challenge phase is over, we'll go through a month-long challenge validation where my team will review everything that came through, impartially review the evidence, and then make calls on valid challenges or not. And then we'll open up the rebuttal phase, another 21 days, where internet service providers who receive challenges against their service will have the chance to submit a rebuttal with evidence. And the general public of eligible challengers will also have the opportunity to rebut certain challenges. Following the rebuttal process, we'll enter adjudication, where we review all of the information together, verify the evidence, make final calls, go through a true-up process, make sure we're using the latest broadband mapping data, and end with a sort of final locked-in map that will push to NTIA for their approval. And once we get that, we'll be solid to start the sub-grantee selection process. So to review, the purpose of the challenge process is to make sure that our broadband map is right and accurate. And this is important because it informs which locations are eligible for funding and their priority order. There are 3 groups who can formally submit challenges through the portal. That's units of local government, nonprofit organizations, and internet service providers. And individuals can participate by taking speed tests at beadchallenge.org or by collecting evidence and providing that to one of those three eligible entities or eligible challengers to submit on their behalf. If you are an individual on this call and you are looking for someone to help submit your challenges, let us know and we can play matchmaker and make sure that you can find someone who's willing to do so. Anything on the map can be challenged in terms of the speed, availability, latency, etc., as it's listed. And then the challenge process, we are in it right now, as I shared. So the current challenge phase runs from February 27th to March 18th. To refresh on our definitions, a broadband serviceable location, or a BSL, is really any location on the map that's business or residential. That is compared to a community anchor institution or a CAI, which has its own definition, but at the highest level, it's an institution that provides critical services and support to residents, particularly those in underrepresented communities. Then we have our three buckets of how broadband is classified at each location based on speed. So unserved location doesn't have access to any broadband, meaning less than 25 over 3 megabits per second. Underserved is that second bucket of it has access to 25 over 3 speeds, but not quite that second tier of 100 over 20 Mbps speeds, or the latency is greater than 100 milliseconds. And then a location is considered served if it does have access to broadband with speeds of 100 over 20 megabits per second or higher. So again, these are definitions that NTIA set forth in this program that we are adhering to. Finally, a multi-dwelling unit is basically an apartment building, a residential building with more than one unit. And then latency is the time it takes data to go to a server and back to your connection. So you want to have latency 100 or lower, otherwise it's considered high latency, and that can push a location into an underserved classification. This is an overview of all of the challenge types. So this is, I think, really pertinent now that folks are getting into the portal and understanding, okay, what exactly do I intend to challenge here? So I'm going to just walk through these at a high level because I think this is important for folks to understand as we're getting into the meat of this process. So the first is availability. This is kind of a binary question of, is the broadband service that's listed on the map available or not available at this location? So if you see something on the map that does not reflect the service you've been able to get, that could be an opportunity to submit an availability challenge and say, this provider actually doesn't serve my address. And here's evidence that displays as such. Speed is a similar concept, but if a provider claims on the map that they provide a certain speed, and in your experience, despite subscribing to that speed or higher, you're not getting it in reality, you might want to take speed tests to demonstrate that, and we'll give some more tips on speed testing soon. Latency, we're looking for latency that exceeds 100 milliseconds. So latency can be seen on most speed test platforms, but if you're using BEADChallenge.org, latency will be right on there. So you're looking for anything above 100 milliseconds, and that might trigger you to want to create a challenge. Data cap is a service plan that's marketed to consumers that imposes an unreasonable cap on the consumer, which is something you can document based on communications with your provider. Technology, this challenge allows you to say that the technology listed on the map at that location is not correct. And then business service only, this is when there's a location that the map says has residential service, but in reality, that provider only offers business level service, so more like commercial level enterprise service. Then the next set of three are around enforceable commitments or planned service. So this next one is called planned or existing service. A challenge here could be if there is going to be broadband deployed at this location by June 30th of 2024 with real evidence showing that committed builds, or if a location has existing service that is not reflected on the map, that would go through this category as well. The next two are around enforceable commitments. So an enforceable commitment is a state or federal grant program where contracts are signed, maybe permits have been pulled. There's clear evidence that this work will indeed be happening. So a not part of an enforceable commitment challenge, someone can say, well, this is reflected on the map as part of this commitment. In reality, it is not. And the reverse, I might be an internet service provider with an enforceable commitment, and you actually left off this one location. So here's evidence showing that it actually is a part of this broadband deployment. Then finally, community anchor institutions, or CAIs. Location is a CAI. So if there is a location on the map that is marked as a circle with the little Wi-Fi symbol, that tells us that it is a broadband serviceable location, not a CAI. So if you want to correct that and say this should be marked as a CAI, you can submit this challenge, and you'll need to provide an explanation and evidence that, yes, this is a school, or yes, this is a library, based on the definition of a CAI. The reverse is if something is marked as a CAI on the map, and in reality, it is not, maybe it's someone's house or their apartment, you'll want to challenge it in the reverse. And then speed. So the speed threshold is a little bit different for a CAI versus a household. What we're looking for CAIs is whether or not they can access 1 gigabit symmetrical service. So they may not have it currently, but could they access it? Should they call up their nearest internet service provider to see if they could access it? All right, so a couple of reminders and additional details as you're preparing to participate in the challenge process. Pre-registration has been open for a couple months now, but flagging that pre-registration is required in order to access the portal. So you'll fill out the pre-registration form, we'll verify that your organization is eligible to participate in the challenge process, and then you'll receive an email from broadband@illinois.gov prompting you to log into the portal, create your password, and go from there. We'll be accepting pre-registration until March 13th at 5 p.m. This is a couple of business days before the close of the challenge process because we don't want anyone scrambling at the end. There is a turnaround time to validate your pre-registration and then generate your credential in the portal. So I know we haven't talked about BEADChallenge.org in a couple of weeks, so I wanted to just share a quick reminder about what this tool is and that it exists. So individuals can participate on their own independently without relying on an eligible challenger by visiting BEADChallenge.org. So I have some kind of high-level instructions here, again, just as a reminder. The resident should first confirm the speeds that they currently subscribe to. So there will be a download speed and an upload speed, both by megabits per second. And I suggest just writing it down so you don't forget. You could either look at your bill, it might be on your account on a mobile app or online, and if need be, you can always call up your internet service provider. Then to make sure that your speed test is as accurate as possible, we ask that you move either as close to your router as you can, or if you have an Ethernet cable on hand, you can plug in a laptop to the router. Also make sure that others in the home are not streaming video or playing video games that could cause some bandwidth issues while you're taking the speed test. And then visit BEADChallenge.org. You'll see here you can click start and it'll capture your download speeds, your upload speeds, and your latency. If low speeds or high latency is detected, you'll receive a little pop-up. That's just letting you know, like, hey, you might want to submit this, your speeds might be low. Then you'll scroll to the bottom of the page, input those currently subscribed to speeds, your name, your address, other information, and hit submit. And then you'll receive an email where you can opt into email reminders to take the additional 2 speed tests over 2 separate days to get you to that 3 speed tests over 3 days. And all you need is 3 speed tests over 3 days. You're welcome to take more. But then the Internet Equity Initiative, who is the nonprofit that's organizing this, will collect all of that data, take the median speed test result, and then submit anything that's a valid challenge through the challenge portal. All right, so a couple of reminders of essential resources. And this is important because if you're going in to create a challenge in the portal or fill out a bulk challenge CSV, there's a lot of terms and there's a lot of data points that you'll need to fill in. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible by putting everything in one place so you know exactly where to look. I'll point to our landing page, dceo.illinois.gov/BEAD Challenge, as the one-stop shop where you can find anything that you might need. Our user guide, I would say, should be like your second point of reference. It kind of has all of the links and everything consolidated into one PDF. This is the timeline that we published on February 20th. So if you're curious how the 120 days of the challenge process breaks down, this is it. And then this is where you can download the CSV lists of each location ID and then its classification as unserved, underserved, or served, and then the full list of community anchor institutions. We also have links to download bulk challenge CSVs here. You can download them from our website, or they're also downloadable directly from the portal. So you can download them, do a save as, and then sort of fill them in at your leisure. A reminder about technical assistance during the challenge phase. So for the next 3 weeks, Shubhika and I and our U Chicago team will be available every Tuesday and Thursday between 1 and 2 p.m. and 3 and 4 p.m. We have a Zoom link that's available. So basically, you'll come in and you'll ask your question. If there's a lot of folks coming in, we'll probably use a waiting room function or segment out people into breakout rooms. So your questions will be, private and confidential. You don't need to worry about everyone listening in, and we'll try and manage that queue as best as we can. And then, of course, our weekly webinar series will continue on Wednesdays. I think we'll kind of see what your biggest questions are and then use these Wednesday sessions to dig into things that folks might be getting tripped up on or might be confusing. And then, of course, as needed, broadband@illinois.gov is the email address that you should reach out to with any questions that can't be answered anywhere else. A reminder, so we encourage you to start now if you are planning on submitting challenges. There might be something that you don't realize or a question that comes up when you're really close to the end of your submission process. And we just want to avoid having that last minute scramble. So really, we recommend submitting your challenges as soon as you can. And at the very least, close of the business week of that last week of the challenge process. If you're a local government or nonprofit and you're working to collect challenges from members of your communities, feel free to reach out to Lake County or McLean County, who have some really great examples of how they're doing this and how they're spreading the word. But overall, the message is the Broadband office is here to help you. We can brainstorm, we can help you build tools, so please don't hesitate to reach out. All right. Moving on to the demo, I'm going to first just walk through the account creation process on the slides, and then I'll switch to my browser so you can see the end-to-end process. So creating an account. The first step, like I shared, is filling out that pre-registration form that many of you have already filled out and have filled out as early as December. So what we did then was we took your information and we verified it to make sure that all of the folks who are getting a portal login are either internet service providers, nonprofits, or units of local government. So once we confirmed that, the first batch of invitations went out yesterday morning to anyone who is verified. So you should have received an email from broadband@illinois.gov with instructions and a link to the portal. That will take you to the portal, which you can see the screenshot here. You hit enter portal, and then it will likely prompt you to register, or you can go directly to that registration page. Make sure that the email address you're putting in is the one that you pre-registered with and the one that you received the email from the Broadband office. Otherwise, it will not work. Another important point is if you are a consultant or working on behalf of multiple sort of sub entities, we'll need to make sure that you're creating an account with those respective email addresses and that you're submitting challenges intentionally based on the account that you're logged in with. So this does not apply to most of you, but happy to walk through that process in more depth offline with anyone who needs. Then you'll be asked to create a password. You'll hit register and then check your email for an email from validation@ilbeadmapping.org. It'll be a super short email and there will be a link for you to click just to validate that your email is correct. If you do not get this email, please check your spam or your junk mail and then make sure to whitelist that email address in case you need to reset your password or access that again. And if you've checked your spam and you still didn't get it, feel free to reach out to us and we can troubleshoot together. All right, so this is the home page. And one final reminder before we go into the demo. So we'll structure this demo around those 3 ways to create a challenge. So this is a good way to just kind of like stay organized when we're thinking about the challenge process. The first is creating a new challenge through the portal using the Create New Challenge button. The second way is using a bulk challenge CSV. So this is a CSV that you kind of prepare independently, gather your evidence, and then you upload it on the bulk challenges page. Or creating a challenge through the BEAD Challenge Map, where you start at the map, you select your locations, you carry them over to the portal, log in, and you can see your challenges there. And so with that, I'm going to switch my screens here. And share this map. All right, so hopefully folks are familiar with this map, but if you are new to the webinars, this is the BEAD Challenge Map. So anything on this map can be challenged. And this is based on the latest FCC fabric data. It also includes enforceable commitments. So again, a location that will be grant funded to be covered, as well as reflecting DSL as underserved. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a zip code here just to get started. All right. So again, you can use a zip code, you can just manually zoom in, or you can type an address. This kind of functions as a regular, Google Maps type of search bar. So everything here is its own location. And then where you see a square, this is a community anchor institution. And so what I'm seeing here is mostly red and some yellow. You can see what the colors mean on the left-hand key or legend here. So this means that based on our current understanding, all of these locations either have access to 100/20 or greater for the BSLs, broadband serviceable locations, and then these CAIs, community anchor institutions, could access gigabit symmetrical service. The yellow one means it is underserved. So it might have access to 25/3, but not quite 100/20 megabits per second. So I'm just going to use this as an example and say, I want to challenge these locations on this block. So you can see I just click this pointer, the select tool, and I used it as a lasso to just grab a couple of them. And I'm going to click add to challenge. Now you'll see on the left, this yellow exclamation point popped up under new challenge. So I'm going to click this and I can view everything I selected here. So let's say, I actually don't want to challenge this one. I might remove it from the challenge. I can also look at this in a couple different views. So if I want to see it in a table, okay, that's helpful. There's a way to delete all challenges if I wanted to start from scratch. I could also save these as a CSV for later, and then upload them using this button another time. So I'm going to grab a couple of more just so I have them as an example. Do the same thing, add to challenge. So now they're all here. And this list looks good to me. I can always come back and do this again. And now I'm going to click Submit Challenges. So now we're in the BEAD Challenge portal. If you have logged in the past, then it'll likely take you right to this page. If this is your first time logging in, you'll just need to log in and then it will carry you to this page. So what you see here is the opportunity to categorize your BSLs, broadband serviceable locations, and your CAIs. You'll have the opportunity to either in bulk assign a challenge type to all of these, and this mostly just makes it easier for you so you don't need to go through and assign all of them down the line. But if you don't have that many, you might want to opt to assign them manually anyway. So just to give an example, on the left here, we have all of our locations. I am going to assign them all availability challenge types. And let's say for the CAIs, I actually want to assign them individually on the next page. Maybe they don't share a challenge type. They're going to be two different types. So I clicked individually, set on the next page. Then I click continue. And here is all of my draft challenges. So just to give you a tour of this page, the left-hand navigation bar is going to be most helpful for you. So you can click on Challenge Process Home to go back home, create a new challenge, which I'll share in a moment. And then this is where you can see the statuses of all of your challenges. So this View Draft Challenges, any challenge that you might have initiated that you have not yet submitted will be available here. So I'll kind of walk through this. So you can see all of the locations I assigned as an availability challenge type are available right here. I had some in here before, that's why this list looks longer. But I have my CAIs right here that I need to assign. So I'm going to click Edit. And then let's say I want to make this one a latency challenge. It's already carried over the CAI ID from the map. I'll type in a provider. Building unit is optional, so only if I'm challenging a specific unit. Then I select a technology. And just to reiterate, the provider that you select here and the technology that you select here is what you are challenging. So you are saying through this challenge, the map says that Wabash Communications offers coax cable service at my location. And I'm actually challenging something about that. In this case, I'm saying that the latency is too high. So I'm going to select residential because I'm challenging residential service. If I'm challenging business service, it would be a business service. And then here is where I put the latency that I measured. Again, this would be through the median of 3 different speed tests on 3 different days. So we'll see that through the evidence, but in this place, I'm going to just give an example of my latency was 140. And then I save a draft. And then the next part is you will be prompted to select evidence. Evidence is required for any challenge. So we have a link up here where you can review the evidence required for each challenge type and lots of other guidelines. If you're unsure about the evidence, you should either come to office hours or email broadband@illinois.gov. And we're happy to kind of walk through unique cases and tell you what will be most helpful to increase the chances that your challenge will be successful. So I'm going to click Select Evidence. And then I'm going to upload a speed test image. And now it's here. I can review the evidence. If I, save this, I come back in a couple days, I want a reminder about what I uploaded. So I can click View Evidence. And now I can see this here. I can also replace the evidence should I want to replace it or just close this window out. I can make edits anytime before I submit. So again, if I forgot the building unit, oh, it's unit 2. Let me add that in, save draft. And then finally, if I feel good about this, I will go ahead and click submit. And you'll see a very quick submitted button kind of float out. And then I can go to submitted challenges here. And there it is. February 28th at 12:30 p.m. I submitted this challenge. To view previously submitted challenges, again, I could just go to this tab I can review it here. I might want to download the evidence to just double check what I submitted, or you can export the data as a CSV. So next we're going to go home and I'm going to show you how to originate a challenge from the portal. And just give me one moment, I'm going to get my lights back on. All right. So if I want to originate a challenge from the portal, I go home and I click on Create New Challenge. The main sort of scenario that would prompt someone to create a challenge on the portal is a couple of things. One, it's best for individual challenges. So if you are just doing kind of a one-off challenge, it is pretty easy to initiate it through the portal. But the second requirement is that you do need to have the location ID or CAI ID on hand because you'll need to type it in here. So I do recommend wherever possible, if you don't have that information, it's really easiest to go to that BEAD Challenge Map, find the address, and then select the location and carry it over from there. But if you do have it handy, maybe you've copy and pasted it from the map, or you are referring to the CAI spreadsheet online, you can type it in here. So I'll select the challenge type here. I'll just kind of show you a couple. So based on the challenge type that you select, you'll be asked for different fields here. So this is location as a CAI, enforceable commitment, data cap. So I'll just do an availability challenge. You'll see the address come up here to make sure that you have the right location ID that you intend to, or the right CAI ID. You type in your provider here. Another easy sort of tip that we've added is it's likely that you don't have the provider's FCC IDs memorized, which is fair. So if you just start typing in the name, then the ID will pop up. So I typed in Wabash before. This is Xfinity. I think we can try another. So we AT&T, Verizon. So you can kind of play around with that and then see who you selected. For availability, you'll need to select a reason code. These are pulled directly from NTIA. So, you know, you're challenging availability, but you're challenging a specific instance of availability. So one example is, you know, I requested an installation and the provider failed to come within 10 business days. The provider denied the request for service. And then there's a couple of other options here. It's important for an availability challenge, or really any challenge, that if they ask for a specific reason, that your evidence matches that reason. So in this case, if the provider denied the request for service, I would look for evidence of a letter or a chat, some formal communication from the provider that said, we cannot provide 100/20 service or whatever it might be to your households. We want to see the address. We want to see the date on it, things like that, just to help us make our jobs easier in knowing that, okay, this is a valid challenge. Then you'll select the technology type that is in question here. So let's say it's fiber. And then you'll select, is this related to a request for service for a house or a residence or for a business? Or are you looking for residential service or business service? So in this case, residential, and then I'll save my draft. Again, it'll ask me for evidence right away. Note that your evidence needs to be either all in a zip file, or it can be an image file type. So that's a JPEG, a PDF, a PNG, or a .gif, I believe. And again, we can edit, we can review our evidence, and finally we can submit. And there we have it. It is submitted again. Before I hand it over to Shubhika to walk us through the bulk challenge process, I just want to point out a couple of other things. On the top here, you can always click this Illinois BEAD Challenge portal to go home to the home page. And this is where you'll kind of just see the basics of what you can do in the portal. You can click map, which will take you back to the map. It'll automatically ask you if you want to restore the previous challenges that you saved, which can be useful if you want to go back to them. My account, you can see information about your account and then log out if you do have more than one account. And finally, support information. So to make sure that we're providing as like up-to-date and dynamic answers to your questions as possible, we have a live Word document here that has our office hours, Zoom details, and then we'll pull in FAQs here as we get them. So to avoid slow responses to emails, be sure to double check whether we've already answered your question in this document. And if not, you are welcome to reach out via email or attend office hours. And so with that, I will hand it over to Shubhika.
Thanks, Devon. Yeah, so I'm going to be walking you through the bulk challenge upload. So as Devon mentioned, on the home screen, you can actually see submit bulk challenges. That is what you'd be using if you're using one of our CSV templates to submit a challenge, and if you have a lot of them, ideally like, over 50 or something like that. So you're able to download the CSV template directly from the portal here. So we have links for each of the different challenge types, and there's a specific template for them that is supposed to be used because they have specific fields that need to be filled out for the different challenge types. So it's important that, we use this specific template. They're also available on the BEAD Challenge landing page that we have. So if you've already downloaded it from there, that's the one to use essentially. So I have that downloaded. I've also created a sample. So I'm gonna go ahead and upload my file. And just for the purposes of demonstration, I have actually included a few errors so that we can see, how to troubleshoot some of the things that happen when you're doing a bulk CSV upload. So after you've selected your file, click on upload, and I see an error message. So there might be instances where something's not rightly filled. So we've tried to make it as descriptive as possible. So with this first one here, error converting column location or CAI ID, which is one of the columns on the CSV, cannot convert non-finite values, meaning there's something missing on there. So I'm going to close this because I cannot go through if there is an error in the CSV. I go back to my CSV file to see and rectify some of that. So I go back and I see, okay, the location ID is missing for this one. And just for the purposes of demonstration, I have a bunch of location IDs I can pull from. So I'm just going to copy one of them, and you're going to paste in the appropriate one that you're challenging. So I have kind of worked on that. I still have a few errors in here, but I'm not going to check them because the prompt did not show me. So this was the one that I saw. I'm going to save it and try uploading again, and let's see what happens. So again, I'm going to go back here, choose my CSV, and upload. It's going to take a while to process. And now there's a few more errors that I have to walk through. So it shows me the specific row where it's seeing the error. So the technology code is an unrecognized value. So as Devon mentioned again in the user guide, we basically have all the appendices that have those different codes that you're supposed to be using. So for technology, I'd be using the technology codes page for reference. So I'll look at that. And then it also tells me that there's an unrecognized value in the residential or business again in row 1. So it depends on the errors that you have, which is for example. So let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to close this again, or you can keep this open if you want to see what's going on as you are working on your CSV. So I'm going to go back to my CSV again. Okay. We'll close out this one. Okay, so the first error that I see here, and I'm sorry, there's quite a few tabs happening, but I hope it's all visible. So with the first one, so in row 1, field technology code, unrecognized value 20. So yes, if we go back to the codes, there's no technology associated with the number 20. I wanted to actually challenge copper service, and the code is 10. So I go back to my CSV and make that correction. The second error that I'm seeing is residential or business. There's an unrecognized value. So let me go back and see. This is again row 1. And yeah, it's blank. So this is a required field. And so because I'm challenging a residential service, I'm going to add R and save it. So hopefully in the next step, I'm able to go through with the submission. So close this error message again, choose file, and select my corrected CSV and hit upload. Okay, so that went through all the errors rectified, and now how it's broken down on this particular page is by the provider that you're challenging and how many challenges for each of them. So in the sample CSV that I uploaded, I basically was challenging availability for 4 different providers, and then I see a count for how many locations under each provider I'm challenging. There are instructions on the evidence file accepted for bulk challenges so that we're able to associate your specific, evidence with the specific challenge. We have also provided guidelines on how to name your specific file if you're creating individual files that you'll eventually merge into a zip file. So we'd want it to be location ID underscore technology code underscore the provider ID that is being challenged. For the purposes of demonstration today, I basically have compiled all of this information in a PDF, and I'm just going to open that, and also it's sample images for now, but ideally it would be screenshots of the provider website. And if you're actually creating a PDF, again, using the same sort of, file naming nomenclature where it's location ID, technology, and the provider ID that's being challenged. So adding that for all the different screenshots that you might have. This is again just for the purposes of demonstration. So I'm gonna upload that, open, and it'll ask me to confirm if I want to submit it. I'm gonna say upload, and we see that under submitted. So these are the 4 providers that were included in my submission. It's still, with those different locations. So it's not all going to show up as different challenges containing the number of locations under each. You can, again, if at a later point in time, and this is moved to submitted challenges now, you can download the evidence that you submitted or export that as a CSV, or just click on these 3 little dots here to see a little more information about the status and when you created it and things like that. One other thing to note with bulk challenges is that if, for example, I choose a file, so I'm going to select this file again, and I hit upload, and maybe I don't have my evidence ready just yet. So with bulk challenges, I'm not able to save this. If I go back on, say, draft challenges, I'm not going to see it. So one note with bulk challenges is if you're starting the submission, you'll have to go through the entire process of uploading the CSV and including the evidence so that you can submit it. There is no way to actually save it as a draft. So that is how you would submit a bulk challenge. If we have questions, we can take them now.
Shubhika, do you mind just going back to the submitted challenges? I just want to point one.
Yes.
So when you have bulk challenges in one CSV, first a reminder that each CSV needs to only include one challenge type, because the fields that we need to collect per challenge type are different. So we have guides on that linked at the top of the page on the Submit Bulk Challenges page, but just be wary of that. You can include multiple providers in the same CSV, And the way that you'll see this presented on the screen once you've submitted your challenge is as it's displaying right now. So each provider will be broken out into its own line. And then you'll see the number of locations or CAIs in that respective challenge, in addition to that challenge type. So even though they were all the same challenge type submitted through the same CSV, the way that it's organized once you submit it is based on provider. And this is mainly so we can then get it to the appropriate provider to give them the opportunity to rebut it should they want to do so. So yeah, I think our only closeout item was just sharing a reminder about our office hours, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 to 2 p.m. and 3 to 4 p.m. There's a Zoom link in your email that you should have gotten if you have been verified and pre-registered. Also in the slides, I think, we'll make sure you get that Zoom information if you don't have it. So yeah, let's pause here and see if there are any questions, or happy to go through different scenarios in the portal if that's something that you're having trouble with or you're curious about. We can use this time however would be most helpful. And I actually am seeing questions in the chat, so maybe I will start here. All right. So an ISP asked if they will see if any of their own customers challenge them. So the answer is yes. Every ISP will have the opportunity to submit a rebuttal to challenges submitted against their service. So we'll spend the next month after the close of this phase reviewing everything, getting organized, and then every ISP will sort of see that pop up in their portal and get an email notification. There's a question about fixed wireless providers saying that they cover certain areas with no way to challenge since the residents are not aware of the services, so not subscribed to them. Is there any way to challenge those services with no evidence available? So we have to adhere to the NTIA guidelines on this, but we recommend if there's any way to find someone who subscribes, having them complete speed tests to test the quality of the service. If you're aware of infrastructure that may not be available that could put the service at a certain household at risk, like knowing the locations of certain towers, that could be a proper challenge. So that's let's see, that would be availability, that would be speed tests. I would point you to those routes. If community organizations are planning to meet to plan BEAD Challenge efforts and want to schedule time with you, would office hours be a way to suffice for the meeting? Or should they meet outside of office hours? I think as time allows, we're happy to meet outside of office hours, especially if you think it'll be longer than a 5 to 10 minute question. So broadband@illinois.gov is the best way to set that up. We've noticed discrepancies between the FCC and the BEAD coverage maps. We are wondering about the origins of this issue and which map we should be using to get an accurate look at coverage in our area. So the BEAD Challenge Map adheres to what we need to be doing for the NTIA compliant process, but Shubhika can maybe walk you through the different data sets that got us to this map.
Sure, absolutely. So the BEAD Challenge Map, as we had shared earlier, that is to make it easier for anybody engaged in the process to get a sense of how their location is categorized, whether served, unserved, or underserved. And there are a few different things that go into this. So currently we've used the FCC data last updated on 23rd January 2024. And just know that the FCC maps keep updating on a 2 to 3 week basis. So if you're looking at the maps now, that might be the reason for some of the discrepancies in terms of providers reported and things like that. Number two, we've also included state and federal enforceable commitments on the BEAD challenge process. So any location that has previously received funding from a state or federal grant program for infrastructure deployment that meets with BEAD guidelines, so the technology and speed requirements, that's going to be categorized as served on the BEAD challenge map, and will also have information on what kind of an enforceable commitment does that meet. And lastly, we've also included the pre-challenge modifications. So locations that are only covered through DSL based on the 23rd January 2024 data, they would have been categorized as underserved if they do not fall under any of the enforceable commitments. So, all of these different data sets actually lead to the BEAD challenge map and just making it easier. One other note, you might see fewer providers on the BEAD challenge map, and that's because we've only included the BEAD eligible technologies on the BEAD challenge map, which is copper, cable, fiber, licensed fixed wireless, and licensed by rural fixed wireless. We have not included any of the satellite providers on there or unlicensed fixed wireless providers, because those are not considered reliable per BEAD guidelines and would not be used to define the status of a location. So that is all the different data that goes into it and making it easier for you to get a sense of what the maps say about your location.
Thanks, Shubhika. But when in doubt, for this specific challenge process, the BEAD Challenge Map is the one that you should be looking at. I think the link's all over the place, but if you need it, we are happy to point you to the right place. All right, we got a question about trying to set up an account, and we're asked twice to verify, but have not received anything. So Sherry, I would say if you are registering through the portal and you're looking for that email from verification at ilbroadbandmapping.org, make sure to check your spam. If you were not verified after your pre-registration, then definitely email broadband@illinois.gov or the email that Shubhika provided in the chat, and we can make sure that we have what we need from you to verify you. Can one PDF have multiple pages? Yes. So per Shubhika's response here, the goal here is if you're submitting a bulk challenge, we as the office need to know which pieces of evidence align with which challenge. So the location ID, the provider, and the technology type is going to be the best way to do that. So you can use the proper codes, you can write them out. It will just be really challenging for us to match it if we don't have that indication from you. So you could achieve that by doing a zip file with lots of individual files and naming the files accordingly as we share on the portal and in the slides. Or this could be all one file, and you just sort of notate on each page which challenge that evidence belongs to. Are there any other eligible entities allowed to submit speed test challenges where tests were recorded by other websites or testing devices? Yes, any eligible challenger can submit a speed test challenge. So the website that I think this question is referring to is beadchallenge.org. The purpose of that is it just makes it easier for the residents to go through speed test challenges without actually identifying an eligible challenger to submit on their behalf, because it will sort of automatically be submitted assuming it's valid. But anyone is welcome to take speed tests on any of the accepted platforms that are listed in our user guide. They're probably like the common ones that you have been using. And we'll just need a screenshot of that speed test. We'll need to know where you're taking it, who your provider is, the actual results of the speed test, which should be captured on there, but just double check that everything is on there. And again, 3 speed tests, 3 different days. And then the speed that you will input in your challenge is the median score that will be a valid challenge if it is lower than the threshold that you're challenging. So whether that's 100 over 20, 25 over 3, or latency above 100. any other questions, feel free to unmute and share or put it in the chat. All right. Shubhika, any other like reminders that you have for folks as they're entering this process and starting out?
I think the only thing with pre-registration, I know some of them are still pre-registering, so at least a day or two to receive that welcome email to sign in with the portal. And as you mentioned earlier, Devon, I think just making sure that the email that you're going to receive, that confirmation email link from, just making sure that you've whitelisted that on your account so that you're able to go through with the process. But yeah, even with the evidence, I think there are guidelines on how many days older it can be. There are availability evidences that can be from within the past year from when you're filing the challenge, or within 6 months from when you're filing the challenge. So as a local unit of government or nonprofit, as you are collecting evidence, just know that it doesn't have to be something that is collected in these 3 weeks of the challenge phase, but it can be something based on an experience in the past 6 months or the year, depending on the kind of evidence that you're sharing. So that's also something to keep in mind that can really broaden the number of things you can actually use to build your case.
Thanks. All right, well, hope this demo was helpful. We will post the recording and feel free to check back as you are getting into the portal and starting out. But happy challenge process. And again, we are always here to chat over the phone, by email, or in office hours. So don't hesitate to reach out to broadband@illinois.gov, and see everyone next week.
Thanks all. Bye.